You are listening to another AlwaysMoto production. The AlwaysMoto podcast with your host, David Hogan. This show contains information about injuries to riders competing in AMA Supercross, AMA Motocross, MXGP, Oz Pro MX, and other international moto events. The information discussed may be unsettling to some listeners. It might be incomplete or based on medical opinions due to riders tending to hide the details of their injuries. We are here to explain the information and increase injury understanding and visibility for the fans. There might be coarse language and the odd stuff up along the way. If any of this offends you, turn us off right now.
I'd like to remind you that he is not a doctor.
That's right, Moto fans, I'm not a doctor, but I am a physiotherapist, and this is the AlwaysMoto podcast, and it's episode 49. I'm your host, David Hogan. We'll be joined later in the show by the AlwaysMoto Contractor, and as per usual, I don't know why, but he hasn't been paid yet. Can't figure it out. Anyway, this is the AlwaysMoto podcast, and we are in the depths of the clinic throwing strapping tape anywhere it will stick because that's what a physio does, apparently. As always on the show, we will be going through all things moto, particularly the injuries in our sport because hashtag injuries are a part of moto. This week's show, we're talking SuperMotocross from Oakland and that rescheduled round 2, the AlwaysMoto Fantasy League on Pulp MX Fantasy Game, the SuperMotocross Emergency Department, and all the updates that you need to know heading into Arlington. We've got an interview with Carter Stephenson, who's a Privateer Kawasaki rider in the AMA Supercross, and he had an injury-riddled year in 2021, and we talk about his recovery during 2022 and getting back onto the race scene in 2023. We also got a segment this week about how to continue training whilst injured. Just got some little tidbits there for you guys and girls out there to help you get through that period of your life that's usually rough and how you can maintain some fitness. So hopefully you get some information out of that. And we've also got a new segment where we're going to have a quick product inspection highlights section here that's new for the show this week. But bringing the show, as always, is Polar Australia. And look, the Grid X Pro that we've got on our wrist and the inspection that's coming soon here on fullnoise.com.au. One quick feature I wanted to point out on that this week, the automatic lap feature that you can have set into your GPS on your motocross profile. You can set it so that it will automatically do a lap for you, so it will keep your lap times as you go around and show it on the screen. You don't have to have anyone holding the pit board and with a stopwatch anymore. You can do it all by yourself using the Polar Grid X Pro. Also, big thanks to Slantboard Guy. I've been using the Slantboard and the new Flex 2.0 board in the gym. I'm doing my squats on it. I'm doing some lunges on it. I've actually started to use it a lot more for my stretching. Found a few different ways to use it for my calf stretches and for just getting into some different positions that would normally be awkward and maybe not get as good of a stretch. I've been stretching a lot on the slant board. And for AlwaysMoto podcast listeners, remember they've got that 10% discount in place. You've got to use the code AlwaysMoto at checkout. And for both Polar Australia and for the slant board guy, if you want to check out those shops, please use the link in the show notes and I'll get you straight there from our AlwaysMoto screens. As always, we still need your support with some merch purchases. Help support the show. Rock our show out at the next race. We've got the AlwaysMoto t-shirts that are $25 plus postage and handling. Send us an email to info@alwaysmoto.com. Put t-shirt order in the subject line. Send us the size and your address, and we will get back to you about payment via PayPal. Now, speaking of that PayPal, if you're able to support the show, please do so. You can jump on our AlwaysMoto PayPal account, link in the show notes, and leave us a donation, and that will help us keep the lights on here and keep bringing you this awesome content. All right, guys and girls, enough with that intro talk. Let's jump into the show.
Hey, guys, it's Matt Moss here. We're tuning in with AlwaysMoto's podcast.
All right, we're in and on the show. Benny, Contractor, how we doing, mate?
All right, how you going, Dave?
Yeah, good man, good man. It's been an all right week for me. Another fantasy win over the top of you, so I can't complain.
Yeah, I think you got me in both again, but I got over 200 this week, so that was my goal, and just got over
What'd
it.
you get, 201 or something?
204, I think.
Oh, nice. Yeah, no, I was pretty close then. It's a rough game, mate. I tell you what, everyone jumped on the Mossy train this last week and didn't go so well for most. But I thought I'd dodge that one and went a different way, and I got screwed anyway. So, what can you do?
Yeah, no, he got 50% peak trend or whatever it was, and yeah, we only got 11 points, but that's all right. When he comes back, I'll pick him again.
Yeah, exactly. I think if a lot of people will, because he showed a fair bit of speed. He actually did really well in that heat race. To run where he did and sort of hold. He was sort of that middle group, wasn't he? Like he wasn't quite the Jet, Pierce and Cameron and RJ pace, but he was the next guy. He was that next group. So he was in there, and that was what he said, 3 days on the bike. So it's got to be better come the next round.
Yeah, that's right. And he had a good start in the race too, but then just ended up injuring that thumb. But yeah, and hopefully, I know he's come back to Australia, but yeah, hopefully they get him a bike and hopefully he can get some practice in for the next few weeks and go back over there and show up again.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll get him a bike as such. Like I know he was talking about that, but honestly, as long as he's doing laps, like he'll have his YZ 450 from Oz Supercross here. As long as he's doing laps on something on a Supercross track, I think you'll find he'll be heaps better come next time because he'll have the taste for it now. Like he was there, he did semi well. He'll be into it. He'll be right up a drain pipe now, mate. So I don't think that'll be a concern for him.
Yeah, no, that's right.
All right. What else did you think of Oakland? I thought it was a bit of an interesting round for the track build. I liked that track. It was a pretty good, that run that they had, that massive long rhythm that sort of went around one corner was a nice setup. And the double whoop section with the Dragons back in the middle really gave the guys some stick, which was awesome. But I like the fact that just sort of it broke down, it had ruts, it just looked like a real track to me.
Yeah, no, the big long rhythm section was good, and the little doubles around that bend there gave them something to think about. And then the whoop section into the Dragons back, and then the next bit was interesting, and it would have been a fair bit of arm pump going on, I reckon. But the part for me where Webb did that quad over the table, I think it was out of that. Might have been out of that corner.
Line. Yeah, just before the finish line. Yeah.
And I was looking at it, wondering all day, is someone going to do it? And then, he pulled it out with 14 minutes into the main or something, I think I saw. So I thought more people would have done it, but I think he was the only one.
I think by that point, like people probably thought about it, but then as soon as the track breaks down, those sorts of big jumps become a bit of a iffy moment because you're going to drag pegs because you're going to hit that face a lot harder to do it. And you're going to, obviously compress the suspension more into the face, and then your pegs get closer to drag. And so I think a lot of people will start, getting the wheelies on some of the other jumps. They didn't want to risk it. So he obviously found a way to do it, which was cool. And he definitely was faster through that section because of it.
Yeah, that's right. And it looked cool too.
It did. Yeah, it did. He definitely did well. But on those whoop sections, did you notice, and I've got this down in our notes here about Jet being ridiculously fast, but did you notice Jet and Eli, I think it was in the heats, and I definitely noticed it in practice earlier in the day, very early in the morning, but in the heat races, Jet and Eli, when they got on that second set of whoops, did you notice how they seemed to like lock in and then they went warp speed. Like they had way more pace than anybody else, but it was just the way they seemed to lock in onto the bike and just absolutely nail that second set of whoops.
Yeah, no, and they're both, they're both good in the whoops, but they're just a different type of beast. They just, like you said, lock in and just go as quick and as good as they can, and they just make up, you make up a fair bit of time there.
They seem to just have this intensity, but like the way I said they locked in, like it just like they came to that section, and you can watch them in whoops normally, and everyone looks sort of similar in the sense that their body position gets at a certain point, they're on the balls of their feet, but just there's something about the way they then hit the first one. they got into it, and then it's like they went even harder than they normally would. It's like they felt they had the grip, the stability, whatever it was, but both of them had this sort of posture. If you go back and watch the heat races, you'll see what I'm talking about. And it's just the rider that they were passing at the time. I think Eli passed Chase in that section, and I think Jet passed somebody too. And you could just see the body position change and the intensity change, and like the elbows sort of go just a tiny bit higher. But it was impressive to watch. Obviously, in the main events, they weren't able to do that sort of pace through there because of all the cupping of the whoops and the ruts in the whoops. But those heat races, that really stood out to me, that they just had it on lock.
Yeah, and I think early a lot of people were jumping them anyway. So for them to, be doing that in the heat races, and then I think they did it a bit in the race as well until it was really bad, probably more for Tomac than anyone. They just, like I said before, they made up so much time in that area.
Yeah, they definitely did. Now, what did you think of Sexton's crash there in the main? Do you think it was the normal situation for him, just brain fart and throwing away, or it's the 5th time now, something like that it's happened? He's in the lead, he's sort of got a comfortable gap, and he ends up on the ground.
Yeah, I don't know. It like you said, it's happened so many times now, and he must just hate the fact it happens every time. But I don't know. It just looked like everything was normal, and then it just, he just got shot off. I don't know whether it's just a bit of brain lapse or what. I don't know what it is. It's weird though, and it needs to stop because it's just, he's not that far away with the points, but if you just keep doing that gap's just going to grow that little bit bigger each time.
Yeah, he won't get there if he keeps doing it. But I think there's a point where, one, he figures it out and it stops happening and he closes that down, because I feel like if he gets one, he'll get 2 or 3. But like the other week at Tampa when Webb got him, I think that was a mental error, that he should have changed his line in the whoops, and he shouldn't have been trying to blitz through that V of the whoop line there, because that caught him out big time. But this one, did you watch it closely? Because I've tried to look at it a bit, but I haven't seen I can't quite pick up his foot position. But my first thought when I watched it live was that I thought he must have downshifted on that face as he was landing down into the pocket there, and that might have just broke traction enough for him to then have the back end go around in circles on him like it did. So I don't know if that was the case. I couldn't quite pick up his foot and see if he was actually, shifting down or not. But then the other thing, I caught it from the other side of the bike, so the rear brake side of the bike. There was an angle, and it looked like he just landed literally in the bottom. Like he said, he landed perfectly on the downside, but if you watch it closely, it looks like he actually hits right in the bottom of the jumps, and just completely compresses the suspension. And it just breaks sideways when it actually hits that point, and there's no chance for him. Like if he had been 3 inches back on the jump, he would have downsided it smoothly. But if he had been 3 inches further, he probably would have started going up the face of the next one, and might have had a different problem there. But he just, it's all timing at that point. But it just looked like he just disappeared into the stroke at that section. So the other thing we want to check on, unfortunately, there was that crash for Phil Nicoletti, and we talk about his injury in the emergency department later in the pod, but you popped up the picture in our notes about things to talk about of Phil that he's had from his Instagram. He's in the hospital room, or in the hallway, it looks like, actually, in the hospital, and he's strapped up to something. And you go, can you explain this to me? And for those who haven't looked at it, check out the photo on Phil's Instagram post that he's put up about Oakland. It's the second or third photo in, and he's in a hospital bed and he's got his arm up like he's doing a stop sign. And all it is that he's strapped to an IV pole with some weights, and he's in a finger contraption device to hold his arm in a position. Now, you were saying, Benny, you weren't sure what that was all to do with.
Yeah, no, from the picture, it's just he's got his fingers in like a Chinese finger trap thing that you see. Hanging to an IV pole, and that's it. There's no, explanation for the medical-minded people, so that's why I asked you what was going on.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you noticed too, but it's sort of, at first look, you might just sort of blank over it and think it's part of the bed, but on his actual bicep is some weights hanging off his bicep to hold his arm down as well. So they're trying to basically traction the wrist joint. Now, because it's I gather from his, I saw on the Club MX YouTube, the vlogs they've been doing, I caught the end of it. He was on the very end of it talking about the injury, and he said that he had a ulnar lunate dislocation, which the lunate is one of the small wrist bones, and the ulnar obviously being the outside of your arm, your forearm bone. But he's obviously dislocated the lunate, so he's torn the ligament there, and it's dislocated out. Now, because it's not sitting, the whole row of the wrist bones isn't sitting displaced from the radius and ulnar, they can just do this tractioning idea. But I was saying before we hit record, when we're talking about this a little bit, the picture that's put up there is a very American style technique where they hang you up and literally use gravity and just wait for it to sort of settle back into place. When you'll relax over the time that you're in there, you might be in there for a couple of hours. You'll relax, it'll all sort of settle back in, and then they'll take an x-ray and check that it's all in place, and they'll cast you up, send you off to a specialist to see if you need any work done or not. In Australia, they would more than likely x-ray you, go, oh, it's dislocated, put you under anaesthetic and put you in a surgical room and just pull it and push it back into place, take an x-ray and go, yep, it's back in, and then let you come out of the sedation, just so it happens quicker and easier. But probably in American medical systems there, and that's probably an extra cost, whereas this doesn't cost all that much to do. So
yes, and he doesn't look like he's enjoying it one bit either. So
well, could you imagine? He's probably sat there. That's probably like the 4th hour he's been sitting there waiting for his arm to dangle and run all the blood out of it. His hand's got to be numb as at this point, because he won't be able to feel it. There'll be no blood in those fingertips, and yeah, he'd be bored shitless.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been nice.
No, but so it sounds like he has torn a ligament in that wrist joint there as well. So he's going to have to get that repaired, which that's at least 6 weeks of, in a cast or a brace, and then probably 6 weeks of him trying to get strength back in that. So that's his Supercross season done, I would dare say.
Yeah, and he missed out last year with an arm problem as well. So that's 2 years in a row now that he won't finish the Supercross season and be on the back end going into motocross if he does end up and going to 450 again for the motocross.
Yeah, it's been disappointing for him because he's actually been doing, he's been riding pretty well in the Supercross events. It keeps biting him for whatever reason. So, yeah, it stuffed his motocross season last year. Hopefully this doesn't stuff him up for this year, but we'll have to see how the recovery goes and what ends up being, how much work he ends up needing to get, how many ligaments he tore basically is the question there, is how stable that wrist will be when he comes out the other end. So anyway, poor Phil. All right. Other injuries this week, not from the AMA. Most people probably on Instagram would have seen or heard the Tim Geiser injury. Did you see that video in the end where he's just skying it out on that Honda of his?
Yeah, no, it was a weird crash. He was just like shooting to the moon and then just bang on the ground.
Do you think he forgot that was like he was meant to double, jump it, but he forgot and he was trying to send the whole thing at some point, and then he sort of half backed out of it or something? Because everyone was sort of jumping into that little pocket and then jumping over the next bit, but he looked like he went high enough to triple the whole damn thing. I don't understand how he got in that position so high yet so short.
Yeah, no, it sort of looks like he may have just forgotten where he was on the track, or like you said, went for it and then mid-air or like on the face of the jump has gone, realised what he's about to do and backed out of it, and then, just landed how he did. It wouldn't have been a nice feeling being up in the air knowing that, you're about to hit the ground pretty hard.
No, that's the moment. Like, he didn't even roll up the windows, as they say, when you're floating through the air, usually flapping your arms. He sort of still held onto the bike and just sort of slowly fell down. And he would have known what was coming at that point. He would have been thinking about it because he was up there for quite some time, which is never a good feeling. If you've ever floated that high and known you're not going to land on the bike, it's an ugly, ugly thought in your head as you're coming down because you know something's going to break. But yeah, so he's broken a femur there. He's going to be out for quite some time. Femurs, depending on the technique they do to repair them, usually it's a rod that goes down. They call it a femoral intramedullary nail that goes down the length of your femur inside the bone, and then they just screw it off top and bottom to stabilize it and stop it rotating. And that's like a 5-month process for that to recover and, you know, get back to normal. So he's definitely out for a while. I'd be surprised if anything less of that happens. But, yeah, not a good way for him to defend the World Championship with being out at the first preseason race. So anyway, another weird one, and I think you sent this to me as well at some point, Benny. Dean Wilson's knees are ugly. I got to tell you, they're ugly.
They are, and they don't look any better with a big lump on them.
Mate, I've seen some bad knees in the clinic. His take the cake. There's just some weird stuff going on with his knees. Like, obviously, he's had a lot of issues with them. He's torn ACLs. I think he's up to 5, like 3 in one and 2 in another. And I'm not sure if one of them's actually even got an ACL anymore. He's just sort of working around it. And that might explain this swelling pocket. He basically had a golf ball sticking out the inside of his knee, which is horrid. I don't know how he still does what he does, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's, like I said when I sent it to you, it wasn't very nice. And, yeah, just after that much, what would you call it? After that much trauma to your knees, I would think that walking around isn't nice for him. And then, yeah, having big eggs on the side of your knees doesn't help either, especially when they need to be drained. Yeah,
well, that's all intracapsular swelling that's just popped out the side. So that was medial swelling. It's probably to do with an ongoing meniscal tear that is catching and just causing issues. And every time he catches it, he pulls a little bit more of it up. It creates that swelling pocket just straight out the side. But getting it drained every time, that's not nice either. Like, that's a needle into the leg. And then we're talking probably 50 to 100 mils of fluid that they're going to get drained out of that every time to get it to go back to some sort of normal size, not have a golf ball out the side. So it can't be fun. Every time they come at you with a needle, you'd just be cringing. But, yeah, he's not going to win knee model of the year or anything like that. That's for sure.
No, but I think he probably prefers knee problems more than the foot peg to the behind.
Oh, yeah. I take the knee problems every day. That thing last year, oh, my God, that wasn't good.
Yes, no, it was pretty ugly, and it went on for a long time. So, yeah, I think he'll take the knee problems over that any day.
Mind you, with even that knee picture, you know how Instagram and that, they'll put up, like, they'll blur the picture and say graphic warning on it. I'm surprised that didn't get, like, a graphic warning, because that's ugly. That's seriously ugly. Even for me, I've seen some weird shit in the clinic. That was still, I'm like, oh, that's a horrible sight, you know?
Yeah, and I've seen things not as bad as that, and they've had that warning over it. So yeah. You're right. I'm surprised it doesn't have that warning.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe next time. Maybe they'll hear the podcast and it'll run on there next time. Anyway, all right. Quick little update too. I've just grabbed the quick overview of the stats this year for the West, the East, and the 450 classes. Interestingly enough, we've obviously had a few more West races than we have East at this point. I think we're 4-2. But we've got 27 injuries on the West Coast already and 13 on the East. And those numbers are just insane. And in the 450 class, we've got 22 injuries for the 6 rounds so far completed. It's nuts. With 63 total injuries, we're 10.5 injuries per round we're averaging, which is just an insane amount of injuries these guys are getting. And I just don't know how it's going to slow down, because these guys are putting themselves through hell, it seems, to get out on the track. And 2 guys that are definitely putting themselves through hell, RJ Hampshire and Cameron McAdoo. I don't know how either of them managed to get onto the track, let alone onto the podium at Oakland this past weekend.
Well, even when they both fell off that night, I don't even know McAdoo fell off in practice and then ended up racing. And then, Hampshire came off in that last Triple Crown. Last one or the middle one?
Second one he fell off in, yeah.
Still raced that last one. So even then, I don't know how they raced, let alone, they only had a week off or 2 weeks off. and then straight back into it this week. I really don't know how they do it.
Did you notice RJ's color on the podium? You know how he's late. You know how he's late to the podium. They had to take Cameron's interview first. Did you notice how his color in his face when he got there?
No, I can't say I did. I'm not actually sure if I watched that interview or not.
All right. If you get a chance to look at it, have a look at pictures of him, in other events in his face, and then have a look at that one, because I felt as soon as he popped up on the screen, I felt he was pale, and that's, for me, that's a sign of his blood issue that he's getting there with the spleen injury that he had. Now, I don't know the details too much of his spleen injury, whether it was just a minor, inflammation, or if he actually cut it. But I know for me, I lost my spleen in the crash in Hadar a couple of months back, and it's caused a few weird things for me. But if he was dealing with an inflamed spleen, that look that he had of that paleness would fit for that for me. I looked at it and went, oh, he's not well still. But then he's on a 450 training this week, and he's going to do some 450 races. You think the guy would take a week or two to have a recovery?
Yeah, especially, like he said, I think they were a bit quiet with that injury, and then he sort of got on the podium and said what was wrong. But yeah, you'd think that he'd have maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, just to have a bit of a break and then get back into it. But no, straight back out and on the big bike.
Yeah, that just doesn't make sense to me, that one. I don't know whether he's directing that or if somebody else at the team is, but surely they can give him at least a week of just do nothing, sit down and take a rest, mate, have a breather, get yourself back in order, then go ride a 450. But I don't know, he seems keen. So, and the other guy, obviously McAdoo, his left arm, the size of that thing was like Popeye, and for him to be back, and it looked like to be at a pretty normal size. Like, obviously we didn't get a clear picture of just his arm without any gear on, but it didn't look to be too bad, and he looked to be, reasonably comfortable on the bike. But I can guarantee you the week or two after Anaheim, the treatment that he would have had to go through would have been so uncomfortable. It would not have been fun at all.
Yeah, no, being the size that it was, the amount of stuff that I think he had done to it just to get him to some point, which in the end he didn't do too bad, but yeah, it wouldn't have been a nice 2 weeks for him to sit there and have all that done.
No, he mentioned that he was trying to avoid compartment syndrome. And for those that don't know, compartment syndrome is where the muscle itself gets injured or a trauma to it and creates a swelling, but it stays within the fascia that's like the bag that covers the muscle, and it can't get out of it. But it swells so much that it then constricts every other vessel and object in that area of the arm or the leg where it's happened. And so the blood can't get out, and it just traps it all, and it can actually cause nerve damage and other tissue death below that point. So he was lucky he didn't get to that point, because the swelling in that thing was huge. It's just obviously that he had a broad swelling that was happening, not just a single point that it occurred at. So, but watching that crash from him in the whoops, I can't understand how it managed to get so big. So I don't know what point he hit in all of it as he went through that motion, but yeah, the arm just looked ugly, and he would have been under so much pain having treatments done to it, getting it drained, getting it massaged out, probably having to sit in like ice baths and stuff, trying to get it swelling down. It would have been a shit couple of weeks for him.
Yeah, and I think, it's obviously a lot better now, but just going back to the compartment syndrome, I think when Kenny had his arm injury, I think they had to...
Similar situation, yeah. He was involved with that too.
Yeah, and I think they actually had to intervene, a few times because it was that bad.
Well, when it gets really bad, they actually have to cut open the skin and let the muscle just swell out into the open until it stops swelling, basically. So it'll just... Think of like a sausage on a barbecue, and you cut the side of it out and it just spews the inside out. That's what's happening. And you've got to let that happen and let it go to the point that it's run out of fluid, and it actually then finally gets to the point it starts to recover and shrink back down until, so it could be a couple of days, couple of weeks that you have this open wound before you can stitch it back up, before it's at a size that you can actually close it. So yeah, it's a real shit situation. But yeah, Kenny had that situation with his arm there, I think twice or so through that process. So it's not a good thing to go through. It can be really bad and can lead you to losing like your hand or your foot. So yeah, it's a bad situation.
Yeah, not very nice.
No. Now, another one that was interesting this week was Jerry Robin. We've been in touch with Jerry this week, actually, and I'm trying to get him onto the podcast for next week or two. But Jerry managed to get some screws loose, not in his head, they were in his hand. He had an old fracture in his hand there that he had a plate and some screws, and somehow he's managed to have them come loose and the plate then bend. So he's had to actually, basically had a little golf ball on the back of his hand, and ended up having to get that plate removed, which is interesting because it's just like having a fracture. You just got to wait the 6 weeks for them to fill back in once they take those things out. But I've had plenty of people in the clinic come up to me and go, I've had this old injury, but I feel like I can feel the screw heads, and I'll rub the top across the top, and I'll go, yep, that's a Phillips head. Just let me go get the toolbox, and I'll get one out, and I'll tighten it back up for them. And usually by that point, their jaw hits the ground and thinks you can do that, but then I tell them that, no, sorry, that's just a joke, But it does happen for lots of people. The plates and screws will come out if you're not careful.
Yeah, and I can actually speak for those people because I can feel mine in my arm, and it's not nice. So,
is it a Phillips head or is it an Allen key head?
I'm not sure. I can't feel.
Try a bit harder. I'm sure you'll tell. I could tell if I was able to grab onto it right now. But yeah, it's always cool when you can tell which one it is, because you some people it comes out really far and starts to protrude, and you can actually almost see it. So yeah, you'll be able to figure it out. Have a go at it later.
Yeah, no, mine aren't loose, but yeah, I can feel the plate as it is. So I can only imagine what a loose one would feel like, and in where it is in the back of his hand, it wouldn't be very nice.
No, it would suck. So he got that out. He's all fixed up. He's on the mend. But yeah, he'll be 6 weeks before he's back on the bike and back at an event, which I think will be the Seattle round for the West Coast guys is their next one. So he's got a bit of time. In other news, before we jump into the AlwaysMoto Fantasy League, just a little update. I got sent through some stuff that was embargoed by an electric vehicle brand. Now, obviously, we did some Stark testing last year. Been keeping an eye on the Flux Primo. We did that podcast with Marco Yokota. There's some more electric vehicle news here. There's a company called Graft, which is interesting. Graft, I don't know if it stands for something or if it means anything to somebody, but Graft is an electric vehicle. They've got a dirt bike coming out. It's the EO.12, and I'm not sure how they want to pronounce that, or if it's EO or E0, but anyway, EO.12. It's pretty much looking like one of those cake model motorcycles, if anyone knows the cake electric bikes. This thing looks similar to that. For me, it's that sort of futuristic electric look. But no, there's stats on it. It's obviously very light. They're going to use carbon fiber wheels, which is more of a mountain bike thing for me. I don't know if you know anything about that, Benny, but mountain bikes have carbon wheels.
No, that's out
of your league.
Yeah, that's out of my league.
But yeah, so that's a different one. But they've supposedly got some media tests happening in late April, which were in the States and in the UK. So we're going to see if we're going to do anything with that, or they mentioned that they might have one out in Australia at some point later in the year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But if you want to read the full details of it, I've got a little article with a press release and just a little comment on it. Coming out on fullnoise.com.au. It should be out tomorrow, which would be Friday Australia time. So by the time you're hearing this, you should be able to find it on Full Noise. So check it out and see what you think. Got a couple of pictures on there from the press release images. It's a different looking bike, that's for sure. But it's not in the vein of the Stark or the Flux, but it's more that sort of electric. When you see it, you'll know what I mean. It's an electric vehicle look for the dirt bikes that have come out originally. So yeah, something different there to sort of point some other information out there. All right, let's get to the fun part. PulpMX Fantasy League and AlwaysMoto Fantasy. How'd you go, Benny? You mentioned your score. It wasn't that flash.
Is it the fun part or is it the bad part? I'm just not sure anymore.
Well, you came out in the beginning of the year all keen and mustard. You know, I'm gonna beat you with this. Just make sure I cover you off, sort of thing to me. And I think you've got me once out of 6 rounds. And as soon as I say this, it'll screw me over and I'll lose. But you know, like I got to take the wins when I've got them. I think I'm 5-1 up now, aren't I?
Yeah, I think so. But no, I'm still keen. I'm loving it. Especially now we opened up the group chat through Instagram, which if you're not a part of, make sure you message us so you can get into it. But the chat went wild on race day, and I know you weren't watching live, so you probably missed half of the.
I missed some of it. I scrolled back through it, and there was some funny stuff in there. But yeah, I wasn't able to watch live on the weekend, but I caught some of it at the beginning when I was watching practice. But yeah, that was the whole point of that group chat, was to get that sort of the day before and the day of, that banter about what team should be. This guy screwed me, that guy screwed me. But it ended up on the first few days that we opened up the chat, obviously everyone was getting to know each other and sort of pointing out a few things. There was some cool stuff that came up in there. So it was really interesting. It was a good group of guys that we've got in there. Anybody in the league but should be getting in touch and joining in with the chat. It's pretty cool. And a couple of the Fantasy League sponsors are in there as well. We've got Paul from Helltex in there. We've got Nath from Goat Brands in there. And I think I dropped in another one as well. I can't remember who the other one is at this point. But a couple of the sponsors are in there too. So if you've got any questions about their gear and stuff, they're in the chat as well. So yeah, come and join it.
Yeah, I think you created the chat, and I think within 10 minutes I had to turn my notifications off because they just wanted to stop me. But that's good. That's what we want.
We created a monster.
Yes, we did.
It's all good, mate. But I quite enjoyed the conversation. Was good. So yeah, it's worthwhile at this point. So yeah, anyone want to join? Let us know. Send us a DM on Instagram, either to the contractor here. He's got Grino22 is his Instagram. You can DM. He can get you into the group, or send us a DM to AlwaysMoto, and I can get you into the group as well. But just quickly, we got the 110 players in the league, which is awesome. If you're an Australian listener or an Australian reader on the Full Noise, you can DM me and I can still get you in, just because we've got the extra added couple of Aussie companies that are still trying to get. We've got one of them on now, which is Bolt Everywhere. But there's 2 others that are potentially coming on board here still. So we're giving the Aussies a chance to get some of these extra prizes here in the near future. So yeah, send me a DM if you want to get into the league if you haven't already joined it. But for those that are in it, we've got about 25 of you now that have sent through your emails, so you're eligible for prizes. You've got to email us to fantasy@alwaysmoto.com with your Pulp username and your Instagram username, or at least your first and last name off your email, so we know who you are and we can send you the prizes when and if you do win something. So yeah, make sure you do that as well. We're still trying to catch up with the other 80 odd people. So yeah, keep an eye on it. Now, your overall score, Benny?
I got 204. So my goal this week was to get over 200, and I just did that. Could have been a bit better, but yeah, just got over.
Yeah, well, I only went 216, but my team was pretty good, and like I said earlier, I dodged Matt Moss because I thought he might have just one bad one here, and he did. I was proven right, but I picked an even worse one, and I picked Derek Kelly. He only got 2 points, so that was my faux pas. I still had my 8 is great. I think I had to get Dylan Walsh from the LCQ, so I couldn't get my 8 from the Heats as bliss, but still got 8 is great. But yeah, I missed out on Derek Kelly getting any points for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, so what did you say you got, 216?
216, yeah. And I didn't do any first lap leaders, thanks very much.
Yeah, so my first lap leaders that I chose obviously didn't get it. And if I hadn't have picked those, I would have been on 218.
Well, look, coulda, shoulda, woulda, and was it ifs and buts were candy and nuts? You know, you didn't get it. So.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind, people. That's, I could have beat Dave this week, but because I got greedy, I'm a few points down again on this week.
You're trying to claw back the overall points, which you're only on 1220, and I'm on 1344. So I think that's where you're getting greedy, mate. You're trying to make up chunks in one hit. You got to accumulate.
Yeah, but you always pick Jet for first to the finish line, especially with the whoop sections that we had, but wasn't to be.
Yeah, no, he wasn't going to go ape on that first lap, I don't think, at Oakland. So it wasn't smooth enough and flat enough for that to occur. But yeah, you can probably try and pick a first lap leader this time. You'll at least have 3 options at it, mate.
Yeah, that's right. You got 3 races, 3 chances, and just that's it. It's the only time a lot of people will pick them, and I just get a bit greedy and just pick both or just pick one. But yeah, Triple Crowns are definitely the time to pick.
So who do you think, with this Arlington round being Triple Crown, for the first lap leader for the East Coast guys, who do you think is the safe pick to get at least one of those 3 hole shots?
Well, the first round I picked Thrasher because he's not too bad of a starter, and we know how that ended. And then the next week he got the whole shot. He got the first to the finish line. So you could think of him. Jordan Smith's not a bad starter, but I think if anyone, you're probably looking at Hunter, VL, or I don't know. Probably only really those 2. Maybe Anstey, but I've seen his starts be pretty horrible at times too.
Yeah, I don't think Anstey's going to do it, and I'm not. Hunter's okay, but he's real hit and miss. I think Vial, and I might even say something like a Deegan. That light pocket rocket, young kid, eager as beans. Surely he's got to get one of them. So yeah, I think Vial or Deegan might be my picks. You're not off the money on Thrasher. I think he could do it too. I wouldn't be picking Jordan Smith. So, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I always toy with the first to finish lines in the Triple Crown events, but I never do it on a regular weekend. So I've got to think about it a bit harder this next few days before the race on the weekend. So yeah, I'll have to work that one out.
Yeah, well, I've got VL and Sexton as my FFLs, so we'll see how we go.
He's gone in deep, righto.
Yeah.
All right. I missed any of that. Anything stand out for you for this week with picks? Obviously, we got the Triple Crown, so you'll know who's in the races if you're watching practice. So you should only be picking those teams in the last sort of 2 hours before the lockout. But anything stand out for you at this point?
Not yet. Like we said, I probably need to just watch practice and qualifying and see who's in and then decide. But if you can look and find the good starters and they're not too bad, then I think that's probably what I'll base some of my picks around, and just try not get too greedy with the 11 handicaps.
Not try and take the chunk out of it, eh? Yeah. I don't know how this one will go, but I kind of like the idea of an Adam Cincerulo in this one if he's looking okay, because he's not an all-star this week. He's got a handicap of 3. I feel that might get some points. Being shorter races, he can start pretty well usually. I got a feeling AC, if you can pick him, he might be worthwhile this week.
Yeah, no, well, he always gets, pretty much gets good starts, and it's not 20 minutes plus a lap. Last 2 weeks haven't been that great, although he did get barshed last week.
Yeah, that sucked.
And then came off again. But yeah, no, he'll probably end up on my team. There's a bit of bias there too, so that's sort of part of the reason why he'll end up on my team. But good starter, so it's one to look at.
Yeah. All right, I think that's enough of our fantasy talk for now. But yeah, if you want to get in that group chat, send us a message. We can add you to it. Look, the sponsors and the prizes, as soon as we tie up these last 2 possible sponsors coming in, we'll announce when we're going to start doing some random prizes for the rounds. We're not doing round winner prizes. We're going to have like position picks for the round. And then we'll have a couple of overall prizes. But we'll get to that soon as we have these things last bits locked in place. But for the ones that are in now and already part of this AlwaysMoto Fantasy League, thank you. And that's Coastal Motorcycle Centre, Goat Brand MX, Thor MX Australia, Michelin Australia, Ringmaster Images, Helltech Australia, and Bolt Everywhere. We really appreciate those guys being on board. It makes the league just a little bit more interesting because you've got a prize to sort of work towards and to actually not just have the bragging rights like I do over Benny at the moment, but actually get something for your hard work at the end of it. So, yeah, thanks for those guys being on board. All right, Benny, I think that's it for this segment part of the show. We'll take a break and we'll be back in just a sec.
I'm Brighton Carroll, riding for Team TCD, and you're listening to the AlwaysMoto podcast.
Now let's jump into, we're going to sort of use this segment about medical jargon to go through a little bit of a rehab whilst injured and trying to maintain your fitness segment. So check it out here. Hey doc, is it broken? Aye, it's fractured. So you're telling me it's cracked? Aye, undisplaced non-union. Come again please, doc? This is medical jargon explained for motor riders. Well, hopefully it's explained, but in this case, we're going to talk about what you can do to maintain your fitness whilst you're rehabbing your injury. There's plenty of times that, you'll have a simple injury, say it's a collarbone fracture, say it's a hand fracture, and there's heaps of things you think, I should be able to still do that. And you're just not sure if you should or what's the easiest way to do it so that you can keep some fitness so that when you get back to that 4 to 6 week mark and you finally get cleared that says, yes, my bone's healed, you can go back and do normal activities again, but you haven't lost all those gains you've made in the weeks before, from the training and the riding. You don't want to just have everything just go back to zero. So there's plenty of things you can do. For me, obviously, I'm in the middle of all these sorts of things with rehab and trying to get fitness and maintain fitness whilst I'm getting all these injuries worked on for myself. I've had different phases where I had all of my injuries at once and I had to continue to build back up and even just get some movement back because I was, almost in a wheelchair when I came out of the first batch from the injury. But then I had points where I'd built all the way back up my fitness, almost to the point where I'd be ready to race, and then I had to go through the next procedure. So it's for me, all of this comes back to a bit of a mentality and a little bit of communication with your treating specialists and treating doctors about what you can and can't do and what they will permit you to do and not do in those periods of recovery, because some of them are very strict and they don't understand that you might be trying to be, or you might be an athlete, or you might just be a very, you're not so much as a community, or not community, a weekend warrior as such as an athlete, but you might be there doing it quite regularly and, quite committed to your training and such weekly. So if you can bring up that with them and then understand what it is that they want you to do or not do to begin with, that's the first step. And then you've got to work with someone like myself as a physio or an EP, exercise physiologist, or even a basic trainer might be able to help you with this side of things. But to design something that you can do safely whilst not causing yourself any more damage to the existing injury, causing yourself to fall over whilst doing it and cause yourself another injury. And you've got to be aware of fatigue whilst you're training with an injury, because if you go too much into the red zone, your body's already working extra hard whilst the injury is recovering to repair that injury. You don't need to push your body even more so to try and maintain fitness, because you'll then delay your rehab and your recovery from that injury. So you've got to monitor things a lot closer whilst you're doing these training sessions and be a bit more smart about how you do things. And sometimes being smart about it means just doing it the safer way and sitting on the machine rather than using a barbell or standing out in the open and trying to balance on one leg as such. Because if you do tip over, you've got one arm to save yourself, or maybe you've only got one leg to save yourself, etc. So you've got to be a bit more calculated with how you do things. Now, so let's jump into this. I've got a couple of notes here to make to get across to you guys. In general, there's plenty of options to maintain fitness. The obvious thing here is if it's an arm or a shoulder injury, you can still stationary cycle on a bike. That's the simple one, right? But say you've got a foot injury. Can you still cycle? Well, the answer is generally yes, because if you have got like a broken metatarsal, which is one of the bones of your foot, you'll be in a boot. Now, if you're in the moon boot, if you can modify the seat, the foot pedal a little bit, you'll be able to get that boot on the pedal. And as long as you're not putting 100% of your pressure through that foot, you're not standing up on the cycle bike, you're just sitting down, using your good side to maintain most of the pressure through the cycle rhythm, you can maintain that cycling. You probably need to cut down on it a little bit just so you're not getting any pressure points into that bone. But the boot itself is providing you the support and unloading of the injury, so you might be able to continue to ride through. If it's a knee or something, obviously that's a little bit different. You might need to change how you do it, or the velocity or the seat height. Now, the seat height is an interesting one, because if you have something like you are, say, a couple of weeks post ACL injury, and you're allowed to start doing walking and cycling and all those sorts of things, but you can't get the revelation around the whole, the pedal stroke, you can do half moons and just go halfways there and halfways back using your good side to do the movement. Or you can lift the seat height up a little bit so that you can actually then and pull your foot back in the pedal a little bit and cheat with your heel range and get yourself to get over that hump of going the full circumference around the leg cycle. Now, if it is something like your hip or your knee or it's your femur and you can't actually get onto the bike at that point in time, use your rowing machine. But take off, don't sit on the sliding seat. Just take that part off the machine, have it set up so that you're sitting on a chair over the top of the slide rail, and just use your arms to do it. Or if you've got access to a ski erg, same thing. Rather than standing and pulling down through the stroke with your arms and doing it as a whole body, put a chair in front of the machine and just sit on the chair and just use the arms and the core to do the action. It won't be as fast. You won't be setting any personal bests on these sorts of things at these times, but it's maintaining your ability to maintain fitness, right? So you're just trying to aim for lower heart rate zones and just go for a reasonable amount of time. Now, you might be someone who normally does things like 60-minute cycles, 30-odd K or whatever it is. You might be setting, 40-minute 10K rows, once or twice a week. All of those things you need to cut down a little bit, right? You don't want to go, because that's the fatigue aspect that we talked about. You don't want to be pushing zones, 5 at that 10K row more than a couple of every week sort of things whilst you're rehabbing. That's going to send you into the red zone too far, and you will delay your recovery of your injury. If you drop back a little bit and say you stay in zones 2 or 3, maybe occasionally into 4 across that row, and you drop that row down from being something like a 10K row down to a 2 or a 5K, and just take your time with it. It's still going to go for a decent amount of time. You're going to maintain your cardiovascular fitness, but you're not going to put your body into the red zone and risk delaying your recovery. So there's a couple of things there. Now, the next bit I want to mention is swimming is a great one to do, and getting in and out of a pool is a manageable way to do most of your injuries, because the body weight aspect is reduced significantly. You're in almost a weightless environment in the pool if you're, chest height and down into the water. The main thing with swimming is that you need to make sure that if you've had any surgery done, that your wound is healed. Now, for most people, they say that you've got those waterproof dressings on and they can stay on for about 10 days. And then when they come off, you can get things wet. That's from a showering point of view for me. Until you can actually, probably about 3 to 4 weeks is when I would say you can submerge in a pool and get your skin completely soft without risking having that wound opening up or creating a point where infection can get in as well, because that's a concern as well. So I usually wait a little bit longer than some of the others might recommend, but that's just based around, I don't want an infection, I don't want a wound widening any more than it has, because as the skin soaks in the water, it's obviously going to create more movement between those things. So not a great idea to do too soon. But swimming is a great thing to do early. If you've got a foot or a leg injury, you can get in a pool and just walk around. And vice versa. If you have if you have the leg injury, you can then get in and actually swim laps and just put one of the flotation devices strapped between your knees to hold your legs up to help you get through that swimming motion, and you can almost swim freestyle like normal. So it's useful to do. The next thing we want to talk about is being safe in the gym. Say you're in the gym, you got an arm injury. there's no point doing something crazy in the gym like you normally would if there's a risk of you falling over or leaning onto your bad side and having to use your bad arm, shoulder, whatever it is to correct yourself, because you can risk injuring yourself further. If you have to wear a sling, wear the sling. If you're at the point where you can sort of come in and out of the sling, great, don't wear it, but don't be dumb and standing on things with one leg and then have to overbalance and catch yourself and force yourself to use that arm. Put yourself in a safe position. Have something nearby to hold on to. If that's the wall, great. If that's another piece of equipment that's got a nice handle on it that's within arm's reach, like, close reach of your good hand, great. Stand next to it and do the exercise there. Or hold on to that machine whilst you're doing the exercise. It's taking out some of the balance aspects and the core coordination, yes, but you don't risk falling over and making the situation worse. That would be the dumb idea in the first place. Next thing we want to talk about is when you start these rehab processes, if there's nothing wrong with your core, focus on it as your starting point. If you can do a lot of core work, it will help your balance and maintain your ability to coordinate the movements from your core once you're actually able to get back into full swing. Lots of times you won't be able to lay down onto the floor to do these things because you won't be able to get up or down from that position because of your other injuries. Find something that's like an elevated plinth. We have them in the physio clinics all the times, but something like that physio or massage bed that you can lay on that's up higher that you can just get onto and off of easy. Don't use your bed. It's too soft. It's too low. It's too hard to get out of. The plinth is more of a firm position to do things like core sit-ups or leg lifts or arm movements in supine, which is supine is laying flat on your back, by the way. Use those things to do it. And lots of these things don't require a lot of equipment. So you just need to have something like the bed. You don't have to go out and buy anything special. Surely somebody around there has have something you can use. Worst case, lay on your kitchen bench. Just put like something soft across the top of it. Just, a little thin foam yoga mat or something so that you can do it up there. That'll work. Just if you're young kids and you're doing this, just ask mum or dad first before you do it. Don't get in trouble with it. It's not worth it. If you're the homeowner, who cares? Just jump up and do it. Maybe check with your wife. And the main part of all of this is your mentality. Focusing on the pain is difficult, right? If you focus on the pain, it won't enable you to train. If you can focus on what you can do, as in my left arm is the injured one, my right arm's fine, what can I do with my right arm? You will get through the routines and you'll get through the rehab a lot easier. You have to just have a good focus on it all, because if you can get through these routines and do some extra things whilst you're injured, it helps you get past the injury. It helps you recover faster because you're increasing your blood circulation, so long as we maintain that fatigue aspect we talked about earlier. But you're helping decrease the swelling. You're bringing fresh blood into the area to help repair it. It's just a general all-round good thing for you, and it also helps your mentality because you're not going insane sitting there watching the same reruns over and over again on Netflix or whatever. So it's important to do those things. Now, with all of that too, you've got to be a little bit aware of your pain and use that as your guide, and if things start to increase, you stop. But you've got to be aware of what medications you're taking as well, because that can influence your perception of pain and your ability to balance, your ability to stay awake, and your ability to make sensible decisions too. So keep those things in mind. If you're in a lot of pain and you're on heavy medications, it might not be the greatest idea to do the exercises just yet. You might need to wait until those medications can be reduced. So this is where chatting with your doctor for your advice about dictates what you should and shouldn't do at what times, or someone like a physio who can help you guide through those times as well, like myself. Just some ideas there, guys and girls, about continuing to train with an injury. Plenty of pro riders will do these sorts of things all the time and come up with crazy ideas themselves to make ways of continuing to train. Like you heard it with some of our past interviews, they cut holes in casts to put bone stimulator and sensors in through the cast. There's crazy things that can be done, but it's about, for the general population out there who aren't athletes and still have a day job to go to, it's about just trying to make things be improved a little bit and done safely so you can continue to have some sort of fitness by the time this is all back to normal. All right, hopefully that gave you some ideas on how to do this. If you have any questions, but please feel free to send us an email to info@alwaysmoto.com and we'll get in touch and talk about, what you could do, and maybe we can suggest somebody that you can see locally in your area. But if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. All right, let's take a quick break.
I'm Kyle Greason, and you're listening to the AlwaysMoto podcast.
Welcome back, guys and girls. Thanks for sticking around. This is the AlwaysMoto podcast. We're going to jump into the emergency department list that's for Arlington this weekend, which will be round 7 of the AMA SuperMotocross series. Now, we're changing up how we're doing this emergency department list this week. To see the full list and every rider that is out injured or coming back, please check out fullnoise.com.au. This list here on the podcast this week is going to be the updates that we know. So all the injuries from the last round that have been added to the list and any of those updates that are coming back in. But if you want to see any other statuses on the riders that have been out for a long period of time, check out that list on fullnoise.com.au. Let's jump into the emergency department. The emergency department. All the injuries, all the gory details, and when they'll be back on track. It's the list you really don't want to be on. You do not want to be on this list. I don't care what time of year, where or how, whoever you are, you do not want to be on the emergency department list. It just sucks. For all those people that are injured out there, listening to this show and hearing about their favorite riders that are injured, it's a terrible time in your life to be injured. But you get better, you get well, you get back on the bike and all's well again. So it doesn't take too long in most cases. So hang in there. All right, the emergency department list. Let's jump straight to it. Styles Robinson, number 40 on that Star Racing Yamaha, was MIA at Oakland. Unfortunately, the general update from him is beat up. I expected he'd be back for the next West Coast round in Seattle, but Star Racing Yamaha does not provide too much information around injuries, and that will be the case on another one on this list later on. John Short, number 73 on that Privateer Kawasaki. We checked in with John after Oakland. In his words, he's written, all good, hit hard and just dinged my head. So I believe that means that he's on a concussion protocol this week. He mentioned to us that he's going to, around Wednesday, he was hoping to ride and see if he's all good, which is the part and parcel for the protocol there that we've spoken about on previous shows. So ideally he will be back at Arlington round 7, but that will depend on him passing those last few sections of the concussion protocol. Joanne Cross, number 848 on a Privateer Kawasaki. In qualifying, had a bit of a collision mid-air, ended up on the ground. He's beat up from that crash. He has a nice facial wound there that you'll see if you check out his Instagram pics. We've checked in with Joanne. He's confirmed with us that nothing's majorly injured. He's just obviously very sore, but he expects to be on the gate at Arlington. Derek Kelly, number 41 from that AEO KTM team. Multiple crashes in Oakland, unfortunately, for Derek. Both were in the whoop sections. The main one that knocked him out was that last one, or when I say knocked him out of the event, not out cold as such, but that last one crashed in the whoop in the main event, knocked the wind out of him, it seems, but he is all A-OK, just taking a couple of days to recover. He's probably already back on the bike, and he'll be fine for that next West Coast round based on this particular injury. Matt Moss, number 100 on the BRX Suzuki, who we had on our show last week before his debut ride. Everything was looking fantastic for Mossy until he jarred his wrist and thumb. It's an old injury he's had, and it just basically sent him to the point where he just can't hold on. So he had to go recover from that one straight away. So he only did one lap there in the main event, unfortunately. He will be fine. He'll be riding his bike back home in Australia. He's back home already, and he will be ready to go for that next West Coast round. He'll be flying back to the States for that Seattle round. So expect to see a longer-lasting Mossy in the next round when he's there for BRX Suzuki. Dominic Thurry, number 76, on that Team Solitaire Yamaha. Crash in practice at Oakland caused a concussion, unfortunately, for Dominic. He will be back on the bike in 1 to 2 weeks, pending him passing the concussion protocol. But he, again, with the time off now between that West Coast round that was Oakland and the next one that is in Seattle, which is about 5 weeks away, he'll be plenty fine by that point in the time frame that he's got to recover from. Now, Phil Nicoletti, number 69 on the Club MX Yamaha, crashed in qualify or practice, I think it was, dislocated his wrist. Not too much more information than that at this stage for Phil. It's a 6 to 8 week injury depending on what he has injured cause whilst the dislocation occurred. So the dislocation is obviously the bones misaligning from the joint. Now that could either be that his whole wrist, the 8 bones of his wrist, end up on top of his radius and ulnar. I've done that in the past. That's not pleasant. It could be that one of those 8 bones dislocates from those 2 rows that they're within, and that's tearing a ligament as such. If any of those things have occurred, he may need surgery, he may not. It all depends. So we don't have too much information here, but given it's a 6 to 8 recovery time frame, I suspect that will be the end of Phil's Supercross season, and he'll be trying to just get ready for round 1 of outdoors that will start in late May. Kyle Chisholm, number 11 on that HEP Twisted Suzuki, unfortunately got a bit of a twisted knee in the days leading up to Oakland. It's apparently a knee that he's previously injured twice with ACL repairs being undertaken on that. He looks to be getting some more investigations on that, but I would suspect that Kyle is one of those guys that unless there's something majorly wrong there, he'll be riding through that injury, no doubt about it. And that information for us, thankfully, listening to some of the other media sources, we picked up on that one. So that was, I think it was either Vital, Racer X, or the Pulp MX post races, videos and podcast stuff there. So thanks to those guys for getting some information out of him, and that helps with our list being up to date. Jerry Robin, number 97, Privateer Gas, has been dealing with an issue for a few weeks now. We speak about it earlier in the show, but he's had his surgery and he's on the recovery path from that removal of the screws and plates that have bent and become loose. So he should be good to go for the next West Coast round as well, which will be Seattle as well. Plenty of 250 guys on this list, guys and girls. There's heaps of them, unfortunately. Justin Starling, number 60, the Privateer Gas in the 450 class. His crash in Tampa, his chin aspect seems to be getting better in the black eye, but the twisted knee seems to be giving some grief. He wasn't able to get through Oakland very well either. Probably getting more information on that as well in terms of scans, but I suspect unless there's something majorly wrong, he'll be trying to ride through as well with this remaining Supercross rounds here, which we've got, 10, 11 to go, something like that. We've got an update on Cullen Park, number 67 from that Phoenix Honda. He got injured at that Tampa round. He had that shoulder injury. He confirmed with us that he was doing okay. I've spoken to him this morning. He's going to be at Arlington this week, so looking good for him to be back. And hopefully, he probably won't be 100%, but he'll be pretty damn close. Matthew Curler, number 958, a Privateer. We were going to try and get Matthew an interview this week, but unfortunately, when we were booked to do that, turns out he tried the ride the day before and his injuries might have been a little worse than he thought. He definitely thinks he's got a broken thumb. He was getting investigated at that point. He was at the emergency room, funnily enough. And at this stage, we haven't been able to catch back up with him. So we're not sure if he's had to have anything further done. But yeah, unfortunately, he's going to be out for at least another 6 to 8 weeks, depending on what they need to do with that injury there. We'll get some more information and we'll try and catch up with Matthew here shortly. Still no information on Dylan Ferrandis, the number 14 from that Monster Energy Star Racing Yamaha team. That concussion in Houston. He has been out for a few weeks. Not sure if he is actually going to be back this week or not. We don't have that information to hand at this stage. Like I said before, with the update with Styles, the Star Racing team doesn't usually bring out too much information on these guys from an injury status point of view. He'll either be there on the start line on the weekend or he won't be. And that's when we'll find out if he is or isn't in or out. So keep an eye on that one, guys and girls. If we hear anything sooner after this recording that we're doing it, we'll be putting it on our social media page. All right, Ryder Floyd, number 296, the Privateer Yamaha ride, and he attempted to race Houston, wasn't able to get through it. He was using this gap between the East Coast rounds to try and get himself together. We expect him to be at Arlington, but we haven't got confirmation of that at this stage, but we expect him to be there as well. Checked in with Devin Raper, number 447 on that Privateer Kawasaki. He's been dealing with that nerve injury from a crash in Houston in his arm. And look, Devin has had the few weeks off to recover between he took Tampa off and he took off obviously Oakland, and he's going to be back this weekend in Arlington. This is his hometown race. It's also his birthday today, but we're recording it on. So, happy birthday, Devin. But hopefully he will be all good this weekend and just continue to work on his fitness and stuff now that he's sort of getting over this injury, hopefully. An update on TJ Albright, number 116, the Privateer on a Yamaha. He was meant to start the East Coast season for the 250s in Houston, wasn't able to. He had a right knee injury in the few days before Houston. We've spoken to him. He's aiming to be back in a few weeks' time in Indianapolis. So that'll be round 9. So it's about 2 to 3 weeks away. So hopefully he is all good by that point. Update finally on Marvin Musquin, the number 25 Red Bull KTM rider. He's apparently gone home to France to get treatment, and it turns out he has a broken scaphoid. Now, the scaphoid is one of those 8 bones in your wrist that we were speaking about earlier with Phil Nicoletti's injury. It's the main one, but so this scaphoid is a problem. It only gets blood supply from one end, and it takes generally a lot longer to heal. And apparently from the information on Marvin at this stage that's been released, he has had a previous wrist injury that prevents him, at least in the surgeon that he saw, the advice was that it would not be a good idea to try and have more surgery on this wrist just to let it heal naturally. So that would mean that this is at least an 8-week recovery time frame for Marvin, which basically is going to spell the end of his Supercross season. So not the greatest of news, but you'll have to keep an eye on that one, because if that healing process, because of that one end blood supply, does not happen, he may still be forced to have surgery later on, and that won't be found out for a month or so. So it could be a bit of an extended period for Marvin, and this is sort of the end of his career here. He's getting towards the tail end of it. Whether this might be the thing that tips him into it or not, we'll wait and see on how that goes. Hopefully not. We want to see him out a few more times, but yeah, this one's going to take a little while, unfortunately, for Marvin. Luis Macias, the 259 we had on the show a couple of weeks ago now. He's from the Privateer paddock. He had those few broken ribs, a lacerated lung, and a pneumothorax. We said at the time he'd be 6 weeks recovery time. He's been exactly 6 weeks. He's back on the bike this week, and he'll be getting ready to go here in a couple of weeks' time. So good to see him back up and on the track again. And Scott Meshy, number 411, that injury for his Privateer, the injury at Anaheim 1 with the 2 metacarpal breaks in his right hand. Again, he is that rider at that mark at 6 weeks. I think he's been riding this week. We're looking for him to be back either this weekend or next in Daytona. So keep an eye out for Scott Meshy here shortly. All right, that is the emergency department update this week. Thanks for listening, guys and girls. And we'll take a quick break here on the show, but we'll be back with our interview with Carter Stephenson.
Hi, this is Dylan Woodcock, riding for All South CMH Stunt Flying Privateer team, whatever you want to call it. Cheers, mate.
All right, joining us on the podcast today for the AlwaysMoto podcast, he's a privateer out of Florida at the moment, but he's trying to make his way back from some injuries. It's number 824 of Carter Stephenson. How are we doing, Carter?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm good, man. I'm another day in the life down here in the Sunshine State.
It is the Sunshine State, from what I'm told. I've never actually been to Florida, but yeah, you guys obviously get some decent weather down there. No, I've been to America heaps. Man. I've never made it to Florida, so it's on the list, but I haven't got there. So yeah, but you guys get some pretty good weather for riding and some pretty good facilities down that way. And yeah, you've been out of the sandbox a few times by the sounds of it, and obviously that's where one of your injuries has happened at.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's the most recent injury, late 2021, and it's really taken most of 2022 to really get healthy. And I mean, even late like August, it just was tough getting back on the bike and feeling like I was actually full swing. So I like to say I'm back at it now, and I think it's as good as it's going to get. So no excuses. Well,
your injury is that elbow injury is pretty significant. And as we were talking before we hit record here, you're saying like it's a very similar injury to what Kenny had at the elbow. And you've actually been able to compare that being a rider out of the sandbox with him there at one point by the sounds of it. So, but like it's a serious injury for you, and yeah, you probably will have some limitations, moving forward for forever to some degree. But you're also telling us that you went back to work pretty early on in all this too. So like you haven't really slowed down too much with the injury. Like you've still been a working man, a family man, and trying to return to Supercross. It's all still going reasonably well for you considering the injury.
Definitely, man. Definitely. It's been pretty interesting, honestly. Like I was saying, I got hurt December I think it was December 2nd or 3rd of 2021. So it's very end of 21, going into 22. I was actually testing the race bike for the 450 race bike for 22. And so is what it is, but I think January 11th, I ended up getting this job that I'm at right now currently. And so around just before I actually got hurt, I found out I was going to be a dad. So it was news that I was super stoked for, but at the same time, with great news, comes great responsibility, man.
Yes,
so
very much so.
It's definitely, it immediately isn't about me anymore, so but so honestly, racing just wasn't first anymore. It was kind of about making sure that that the family's taken care of. And of course that's always right there on the list, but for every racer, it's a lot easier to be selfish when you don't have the little one. So as soon as the little one was in the picture, and then as soon as I got hurt, it was like, all right, hold up. I need to reevaluate kind of where my gears are at. So I kind of changed gears and buckled down. I'm a project manager down here in Florida, renovating multifamily complexes and whatnot. And so doing about 300 apartment renovations a year. And so we're just plugging away and just making money, man. And it's the 9 to 5 grind to an extent, I should say.
So how does a man like you fit in time to hit the gym or go for a cycle or even just get the bike in the van or the truck and get to the track for an hour or two? How do you fit that in?
Oh man, usually it's I'm loading the bike up between 10 and midnight at night, and then I'm out the next day at 6 a.m. heading to the job site, and I'm there at about 7, and then I try to put in some different hours than everybody else, and honestly my boss is pretty cool, so he knows, if I put in my hours, I walk my units and I make sure that my guys are taken care of and they're on the up and up. Everybody knows what they're taking care of for the day. I've been known to maybe slip away a time or two and to go put some of those in. So luckily my job sites in this past year have been in Orlando, and there's Orlando MX and then there's Spider MX. So and then if you go a little bit past Orlando MX, there's another track called PAX Track. So about 30 minutes, but between 30 minutes and an hour. So maybe between 11 and 2 p.m. I can scoot away and I can go put in 2 or 3 motos. And so honestly, throughout the year, I've probably ridden, man, probably 20 times since I've been cleared from my elbow, which I was cleared in early March of 22.
Wow.
So I've probably ridden about 20 times or so. And so like I told you before we hit record, I got cleared early March, and I was supposed to be cleared middle of February, and it took a little bit longer. Doctor cleared me middle of March or early March, and then I was gonna go race some Supercross on the 250, and I just really wasn't ready, and so I hadn't really been cycling. I hadn't really been just grinding, and so like I was telling y'all, we knew we had a baby on the way, and so all of our family, all of our friends are all up in Missouri, so we were gonna have a baby shower in Missouri. And so we're going back anyways. We were going to make it's about an 18-hour drive from where I live. And so we were going to make the drive. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I just put the 450 in the back and we'll just race St. Louis the day before? So
why not?
I went and raced St. Louis. And I went and raced St. Louis with only riding the bike twice. I'd only been on the bike twice, just riding some outdoors since I had gotten hurt in December. And I qualified 41st there. So I was like, all right, well, when it kind of started coming time to think about the 2023 season, I was like, do I hang it up, or do I keep racing? Do I keep making it fun, keep showing up, and keep having a blast? And so I looked back at, well, you were on the bike twice, literally twice in 4 months' time, and showed up and qualified 41st in the 450 class. Why not? So I'm like, let's ride a few times. Let's get it going. And so we put a program together for 2023, LA Wraps, Stallman Power Sports, WebNX Services, Art of Lighting, Mauro Costa, Premier Power, CF Golf Carts, Works Wheels and Mods, Shades of Gray. Honestly, those people right there all helped me put together a solid program, a solid bike. And they're just helping me go racing where it's not all about money. I'm not losing money going racing. All these guys are helping me get to each round and whatnot. And so, yeah, I have a great job. Yeah, I can pay the bills and whatnot. But honestly, Supercross, man, it breaks people, man. It breaks pockets. And so for me, it's just not fun, at the end of the night, just only thinking about, man, how much money did I make or lose? And so just taking the money out of the equation, having a solid foundation behind me and having these local companies help me out in a big way, making me zeroed out when I'm walking the track. I'm walking the track and I don't have any money that's flowing out of my pocket yet. And so unless I'm breaking parts or something like that, then I have money to deal with. And so it's been an awesome thing, and I'm just excited to keep building round by round for the whole East Coast season.
So you're just doing the East Coast on the 450 at this point in time? That's what you can afford to get to, I gather?
For sure. So the idea was actually to do the East Coast in the 250 class, and actually blew a motor up. It didn't even fully blow up. I actually just spun a camshaft on my 250 motor on the Tuesday before Tampa, and so fantastic. It was, and that's the only 250 I have. So it was kind of the predicament it was in. It was really either go grab a new one from the dealership and ride a bone stock bike, with the pipe on it, or go 450. So 450 was the move, and honestly, right now it looks like it'll stay the move for Supercross this year.
Yeah, okay. So go back to that elbow injury and unfortunately that 2021 year, because you said as well that you managed to have a wrist fracture earlier in the year, and then obviously get back on the bike, look to be getting ready for Supercross again, and then do the elbow. And the elbow is obviously significant. Yep. I was reading through your old post and the x-ray that you had up on Instagram, and you got the whole terrible triad going on there with a bunch of things. So tell us about how that injury affects you, because you said too you're a bit of a metal man now.
I won't lie, man. Between 2021 was rough. Now that you put it in there, man, I don't even think about them being in the same year, because man, I felt I had some surgery done by my surgeon in Missouri on my wrist, and when I got hurt in Indianapolis. So I got hurt in Indianapolis, I think it was round 3 of Indianapolis, so round 6 of Supercross last year. In 2021, excuse me. So I broke my radius and my ulna, so I broke both of them, and I got my wrist plated in Missouri. So I basically transferred. They set it in Indianapolis, and then I went home. It's actually a pretty gnarly night, man. I ended up getting my wrist set, and then at about midnight, obviously, they give you a handful of painkillers when they're setting your wrist and everything like that. But I mean, honestly, I felt as straight as an arrow, and my dogs were actually in my van, and it was freezing that night. Like, I mean, there was snow on the ground and everything like that. And my generator had shut off. So my dogs were freezing cold, man. And so, I felt terrible. So like, dude, my adrenaline was already going, and I lived in St. Louis. So I was only about 4 hours away. And so I just jumped in the driver's seat and of my Sprinter van and just deadheaded home.
Oh, wow.
At Saturday night at like midnight. Well, all the hotels downtown were all full, all booked and everything. So
you're
I would
like
have
high
had
as
to
a
have,
kite on pain meds behind the wheel with some cold dogs in the back.
No, not at all. That was, like I said, straight as an arrow. Like, I actually had to load my bike up myself.
Oh shit! This is an awesome story, man.
I had someone help me out. I had to load my bike in the snow. I had one guy help me out because he saw I was trying to do it by myself, and my girl was helping me. Mackenzie was doing the majority of it, and so, man, it was a nightmare. But I mean, all of that was going so much. I mean, I was already just rocking and rolling. I had to drive somewhere because all the hotels right around the stadium were all full. So I would have had to have driven somewhere outside of the city anyways. And, man, I once I got on the highway to get out, I was like, let's just get home, you know, let's rip. So I drove all the way home that night, but the whole problem was the very next day I was in severe pain. You know, obviously I just had my wrist set, and I had two different wrist fractures. Yeah. And I had scheduled for surgery, but you know, surgery wasn't for like another 2 days, and they had prescribed me pain medicine. But like I said, I just jetted from the hospital, and honestly, I don't take pain pills like at all. I mean, and it's just from how I was raised. Like I wasn't raised to take Tylenol or ibuprofen or anything. It's just not as like a go-to. And so when it comes to like real pain meds, my mom actually worked in like a prevention field for the state of Missouri for years and years and years. And so real pain meds, like my family really doesn't mess with those. And so for me, getting those pain meds that night, Saturday night, was not on my mind whatsoever. You know, I was worried about my dogs. I was worried about finding somewhere to sleep that night. And basically I got home to Missouri, and I called, you know, the local Walgreens to try to fill my prescription. And the lady tells me, oh, well, that's an out-of-state. That's an out-of-state prescription. I can't fill that in Missouri. That's only for Indiana.
Jeez,
so
that's
basically
helpful for you at that moment.
So basically, yes, no pain meds. And so basically the only way for me to get prescribed pain medicine again was to go to the hospital again and basically be seen. And so I had to go back to the hospital. I actually didn't even go all day Sunday, and I didn't go till like 4 a.m. Monday morning. When I hadn't slept at all since I literally drove home. When I drove home and I got home, I slept between like 3 a.m. and like 7 or 8 a.m. So I got like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And then that sleep was the only sleep I got until like for the next like 48 or like 72 hours. And so then, it was gnarly. So then I ended up going back to the hospital at like 4 a.m. Monday morning. And basically I came home so I lived in St. Louis. My parents lived in Rollo. It's about 2 hours away from there. So when we got to St. Louis Sunday morning, we ended up going to my mom's house. Me and my girlfriend went to my mom's house to just hang out there so I could just kind of get the ultra care just from both ends of it and everything. Yep. And honestly, the surgery I was having was in Columbia, Missouri, which was another like 2 hour hike. opposite way of Rolla, so even further. So it basically was bridging the gap. So we were just going there, and her whole family lives there, all that jazz. So basically I went to my hometown hospital on Monday morning at 4 a.m., when I was wincing in pain. Well, my town, whatever drug you want to name, man, every single one of them, right? They looked at me like I was seeking pain pills, like I was seeking pain medicine. But the fact of the matter is I had a broken sternum, I had 3 broken ribs, and I had 2 broken bones in my wrist, and I was needing surgery on my wrist, and I hadn't taken pain medicine in almost like 60 hours at that point. Jeez. And so then basically they gave me some pain medicine, and it worked for a little bit, and then basically it was gone. So so they sent me home. So then at 5 a.m. Monday morning or something. So at like 7 a.m., I mean, the Walgreens didn't even open till like 9. Yeah. At like 7, I'm dying in pain, and so I'm like, I wish I wouldn't have gone back, but I went back, and this lady, basically, they just looked at me like I was a drug addict, and I was just like, I don't think you understand. And she pretty much just gave me the runaround and whatnot, and I'm just like, please, you don't know me, and like, it's people just don't even understand, man. I don't need to tell someone that I'm a professional athlete for you to treat me a certain type of way. If I have 5 broken bones in my body, just help me, And so it was bad. It was a bad ordeal, and finally ended up getting surgery on my wrist, and my wrist was super solid. End of 2021, I started riding again. And then, I got hurt in December of 2022 and had the terrible triad to my elbow.
And that's not a simple injury either. Like, how did the pain meds go at that point? Were you able to get them? Did you have a better process this time?
Yeah, honestly, it was a state in Florida and whatnot. And I've already transferred all my stuff down here and whatnot. So. With the elbow, I think I honestly just didn't get top of the line surgery. I think which I don't even know, but I know for a fact that my surgeon in Missouri was, he was an athletic surgeon for Mizzou football. Yep. And so he worked on athletes. And so, but down here in Florida, I don't think I got that care that I got in Missouri. And honestly, I don't know if it was just being in the same arm, same year. I don't know what it is, but I think, man, after I had that elbow injury, it feels like everything in my right arm is so much more compressed. But honestly, it felt like it worsened my wrist injury. So,
well, yeah, like you've broke that head of the radius there up at the elbow, which is a part impacts your turning of your hand for your supination and pronation, your hand over and hand down to open a door sort of thing. So it's all linked, unfortunately. So yeah, you will have some impacts on both of those. It brings back the impact of the wrist fracture from a few months earlier. So it's unfortunately a joining point there for you. So it sucks, but you were also talking about that elbow, but like the fact that it dislocated, the gnarly part about you had to go through a few efforts before they figured out they couldn't put it back in straight away.
Yeah, there's a little bit of there's some funny parts of that one too. I'm outside the garage right now, just hanging out. I should pull Mackenzie out here and have her tell that. But so it's a pretty interesting one. So basically, when my elbow happened, I was out at Sandbox. Happened in a beefy set of whoops, and basically, obviously, instead of waiting for an ambulance or something, we just hopped in my Sprinter van. I have my girlfriend drive.
Yeah.
Actually, luckily, that was actually her second time coming to Sandbox. And because she had been working full time at the time as well. And so she hadn't really been able to be my wingman and kind of, be there every day. And so we were stoked that, she got to come to the track and everything. And then boom, I ended up getting hurt. And luckily I had her there, and I just hopped in the passenger. She hopped in the driver. We went to the local hospital here in Claremont, and I don't know, man. It's mixed opinions about this hospital. You hear it one way, you hear it the other, and so, not to trash talk anybody or any establishment or anything, but their practices aren't so great if you ask most people, and so basically they're like, oh yeah, it's just dislocated. Which is what Ken said right before I left the track. Ken kind of looked at it and he's like, oh yeah, it's just dislocated, bub. You'll be all right. And so I'm like, fingers crossed, Kenny's right.
Yeah,
and
Dr.
so
Ken Roxon's on the job. Yeah, that'll be good. Yep.
Yeah. He feels it through the jersey and he was like, oh yeah, dislocated. You'll be all right. And then, turns out that basically that's what they thought at Claremont as well, at the Claremont Hospital. They x-rayed it and they're like, oh yeah, just dislocated. All right, so let's basically they sedated me. So they gave me man, I wish I knew exactly what it was. They gave me as much as propofol, I believe.
Oh yeah. Okay.
They gave me propofol as much as they could. I don't know if that was according to my body weight or my BMI or anything.
It's usually along those lines, yeah.
I figured it was, but basically they said they could give me the most they possibly could. So they basically knocked me out, and I didn't remember the first tug. Well, the first main one or the first two, I should say. So the first one they did, they started yanking on my arm while I was out, and so but I was still conscious. But I'm out. And so basically they started yanking on my arm and I ended up biting the doctor. And
you bit the doctor. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I ended up biting the doctor on the first go around. Right. And so, cause they had one person holding me. And so then holding me from the side. And then, so then the guy who starts to yank, I'm yelling. I end up biting the guy. I end up biting the doctor. And so they for the second one, they called like two more people in. So there was three people holding me down. And then there was one doctor pulling my arm. And so basically there was one person on each side of me. And then the third one laid on top of me. And I was telling you about my dogs earlier. Yep. Well, my boy dog, his name's Cash, and he's a big golden doodle. He's like 65 pounds or so. And when the third guy laid on me, and they're trying to set my arm, I was cussing at him and I was saying, "Get the F off me, Cash!" And I'm kicking and I'm trying to get this guy off me, basically. Yeah, I was knocked out. Yeah, I was conscious, and so he's like, "Get off me, Cash!" And so, I thought it was my dog and whatever. And so then the third one, so then basically it didn't work, right? And so then I'm sitting there, and the medicine wears off. The propofol is not. It's it's very quick. It's not like a long, right? And so basically, it wore off after. I don't know how long it lasts, probably 10, 20 minutes or something. And so basically, they're like, well, let's give it a go again. And I'm like, all right. Well, they're like, do you want some pain medicine? I'm like, well, just go for it. If you're going to set it, let's just set it. And so they start pulling on it. They're yanking on it. And I'm like, oh, but, I'm able to kind of grit my teeth through this one. And, I actually know what's going on. And I got to laugh with them about what happened and whatnot, and tell them sorry and stuff like that. And he showed me the bite mark and everything. And so, the third one didn't work. So then the fourth one, they're like, well, let's get a stronger. Dude, they're like, let's get a stronger guy to pull on it, man. So two of the guys swap, and they start pulling on it. I'm like, all right, stop. And I'm like, something's not right. After you guys tug on this thing 4 different times, 2 times when I'm completely out, 2 times when I'm conscious, I'm like, this thing's not going back. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, well, let's do another x-ray. Or they said, they were like, let's do it one more time. And I was like, no. No. So they were going to go a 5th time. And I was like, no chance. And so, yeah, basically I was like, let's do another. I suggested another x-ray. And because at that point it was just me and my girlfriend there. And so, I mean, I'm just going off what I think is the best thing to do. And I'm like, you guys need to check me out again. Yeah. And so they gave me another x-ray, and they're like, yeah, sure as hell, there's a bone fragment in there. So basically the radial tip was in the nook of my elbow, and there was just no chance of that elbow going back because the whole nook was filled with the radial tip. So
tell me you're never going back to Clermont Hospital again. I gather that scarred you for life.
I can tell you for a fact that when my girlfriend gave birth to our baby girl in June, she did not give birth at Clermont Hospital, correct?
She's scarred too. Yeah, she's never going near it.
Yeah, she's like, oh, hell no. She's like, no way, no chance. So,
good times.
So, man, like I said, I don't want to bash any establishment, but man, like I wish doctors would open their eyes sometimes, and when something doesn't work like that, you're not going to force a body back together. And so I guess sometimes you are, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no, that's a bad one. I'm surprised you let them have 4 goes. I know you stopped them at 5, but I'm surprised you got that far. I probably would have had 2, and that would have been me. So yeah, geez, that's rough.
I don't know. Do your thing, I don't know. I can't pull my own arm back into place. So let's get it rocking. You know what I mean? And so, but at one point I'm just like, goodness, this thing isn't just popping back in place. So let's figure out what's wrong right now.
So that radial head for you is now a piece of metal, you said, and it's basically got an Allen key head bolt in it, and that's what it is.
Yep. I'm ready to loosen that thing up too. I think it's tight, man. I can't, if I make a, I just open my hand all the way up and I try to bring my elbow back and make my thumb touch my shoulder. Yep. I cannot touch it at all.
All right.
I'd say I'm about 3 inches away. So, it's a little bit tough as far as my range of motion out is about 95% or so. It's pretty much fully there.
Yep.
But my range of motion back is pretty bad, and so.
Do you notice that on the bike?
Push-ups, dude. Honestly, on the bike is where I seem to notice it the least in my entire life. It's actually pretty crazy when I ride. And maybe I compensate for it and I just don't necessarily feel that or notice it. But honestly, I have a ton of pain in my elbow through my daily life. And then when I'm riding, don't think about it, notice it whatsoever. And so, man, it's a beautiful therapy, that's for sure.
Well, it's obviously distracting everything from you while you're not focused on it, like you normally would be, because you're concentrating on the next route, the next jump. I've got my grip on this, my feet are in contact with the pegs here, and I'm, body position there. So you're just not paying attention to it, which might be the therapy you need just to let it go away for a minute,
Totally. Yeah, it honestly is. It is it is the perfect therapy, honestly. And so, man, that's what I share with people though too, is dirt bikes honestly have been, for me, always been my outlet in life and whatnot. And so I think that, man, it is a beautiful therapy for sure. Super easy, hop on a dirt bike and let it rock and roll. I'm staring at my 1994 CR500 right now, and all I gotta do is put the carburetor back together and pop it on and this thing's ready to start. So I got a fresh rebuild, and
oh man, I can see
dude,
some pretty sweet Instagram videos coming from you in the next few weeks. Then if you've
Oh,
got a CR500 sitting in the garage ready to rock, that's awesome.
Yep, 1994, man, and yeah, my hometown shop, Stallman Power Sports, the general manager Ethan, he bought a 2003 KX500, and I was riding that back in. That's actually what made me get back into racing and riding, man. Is so I quit when I was 16, and I was running my dad's construction company full time. My dad moved to Florida, and I was running his business, and I was running a crew there in Missouri. And when I was 17, I graduated from high school a little bit early, and was making my own money and everything. And so Ethan talked me into getting a Kawasaki and signing a Kawasaki demo deal. And so basically I just signed away and came and picked up a bike. And then about a month after I got that bike and started riding again, he bought that 03 KX500 and basically just offered it up for me to ride. And we did the suspension on it, and I went and jumped the leap up at Redbud.
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, man. And then I did a video with Brett Q. Man, if you haven't seen that, you got to go check it out. It's called The Beast KX500 on YouTube, and it's on BQ365 Brett Q Instagram or his YouTube page.
I think I've seen that. I don't think I realized that it's you until you're saying this now, but I think I've seen that video because I watched a few of Brett Q's stuff in over the past few years and stuff. So yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, but if you see a KX500 ripping on there,
that's you
doing some oppos. It's definitely me.
Yeah.
So
I'm going back to find that after we hang up. So yeah.
Dude, please. But it's that basically, man, I started riding that 500 and I just fell in love again, honestly. I just fell in love with riding. And excuse me, and actually at Redbud there was a pro-am the day after the national, and I didn't have my pro license or anything, and so I signed up in 450A on Sunday for the amateur class, and I hole shotted the pro class and jumped the leap on the first lap and threw a one-hander over it. And I think I got second that moto on the KX500. And so it was, I rode that 500 for like 6 months straight. And I remember one day I rode it at a two-stroke only race. And that morning the foot peg fell off. And then something else happened that day as well, later in the day. And I remember I put it on the stand after that, and Ethan, the guy whose bike it was, I was like, dude, I got to quit riding this thing. And he was like, why is that? And I said, because I said, look what I'm doing to it. This thing was damn near brand new. And I was like, I'm beating this thing up. And I was like, I got to quit riding it. And from that day, I started looking for a 500, and I bought a CR 500 the next year after that. So,
oh man,
it's kind of been hanging out in my garage and collecting dust. Actually, Brett Q blew it up in 2000. So I rode it twice, and then I let Brett come ride it, and he blew it up. And it's been sitting in my garage for like 3 years, and I finally rebuilt it just this past like 3 months ago. So it's time to fire it up, have some fun.
Well, yeah, I look forward to the videos on that one, man. That's going to be awesome. But yeah, look, it's nice to hear these crazy stories that us moto guys go through, especially with the medical field. You've obviously had your fair share of shit shows in the medical realm from what you've just gone through. And look, it's awesome that you share that with the listeners on the AlwaysMoto podcast, and we really appreciate that sort of stuff because it just makes everybody understand what you guys go through to get to the next race. Like everyone seems to have that passion, and you like that what you're just talking about there with the 500 is a clear passion for the sport. It just means that, unfortunately, the injuries that go along with it sometimes slow us down just a tiny bit. But everyone's always coming back, it seems. So it's good to see you back at the races this year.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on, and just chatting and whatnot, man. Even podcasts aside, it's just fun sharing some laughs and sharing some memories too. Honestly, some of those details, I don't even think about some of that stuff. And you start poking around and asking some questions, and man, it is super funny. Just thinking back at honestly how many hoops and hurdles that I have had to jump through, just being hurt and trying to get healed up and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a massive process, and we all have those little funny moments in those medical stories, because something always happens to us when we have a crash and you end up in the ambulance or something. Always something funny happens, and it's always nice. You don't realize it until you start in the middle of a story, and you're like, oh yeah, this happened, and this is shit funny, and it comes out in the podcast, and it's nice to hear that for everybody else. And yeah, like I've got a bunch of those sorts of things too, and I'll have to share them with you one day as well. But yeah, look, it's awesome to chat to you, man. Thanks for the time on the show, and look, we'll try and catch up with you. I'm hoping to be in the States later this year. I'm going to catch a couple of nationals, so maybe we'll see you around at one of those.
All right. It sounds like a plan, man. Well, let's get together, and I got a few extra bikes, so if you wanna do some riding, let me know what sizes and stuff. We'll get some gear lined out, man, and we'll do some riding in the Sunshine State for sure.
Oh man, I think that's an invite I'm going to have to take up at some point. So sounds good, man. Thanks again, Carter.
Yes, sir. You got my number, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
No worries. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Scott Meshy, number 411, and you're listening to the AlwaysMoto podcast.
Welcome back, guys and girls. Thanks for sticking around on the AlwaysMoto podcast. Now, let's jump into this little quick product inspection highlight we're going to do weekly here on the AlwaysMoto podcast. This week's product, it's actually a Barkbuster handguard. It's a VPS MX handguard. I've been using Barkbuster handguards for about 15 years now, maybe a bit longer, I think. I can't remember exactly, but I've been using them for a long time as a protection mechanism for my hands. Not so much for the fact of how they look or that they're extremely sexy and colorful, or you can add more logos to your bike because there's more flat area. All those things are positives, but I use them as per usual with most of the stuff that you hear me talking about to prevent injury. These handguards obviously protect you from roost. They protect you from impacting trees if you're riding in the woods. And they also, just when you drop the bike or you impact another rider in a corner, they're protecting your hand because it's the plastic that's hitting first, not you, and not jamming the lever into your fingers as easily as they would in between the bars without the handguard. So check out these handguards. They're super easy to install. They give a lot of protection. You don't even notice that they're on your bike after the first ride, but they do make things look great. You can add some colors. They've got all different colors for all different makes and models. You can also go pink or white or whatever, black that's to offset your bike if you wanted to do that as well. You can add extra pieces to these. They have some for winter time. You can do some wind deflectors to make the guard a little bit bigger and deflect the wind further away from your hands. But just protect your hands with some Barkbusters, guys. You can find out more about these Barkbusters and all the other versions of, because there's not just these VPS MX handguards. They've got a whole range of handguards from the full wraparound to different versions of these MX handguards as well. So you can check them out at barkbusters.net. That's BARKBUSTERS.net. And this VPS MX handguard starts from about $69.95. It's cheap insurance for your hands because, as I say all the time on this show, hashtag injuries are a part of moto. All right. Let's get into our outro, guys and girls. Thanks for sticking around and being with us on this week's show. It's a great show, good listening. Thanks to Carter Stephenson for that interview. It was awesome to hear his story there. And just, as much as he's not one of the front-running guys, all these people that attend these AMA rounds trying to qualify, they have some exceptional stories that they need to be told so that you guys can hear them and just understand what they go through to get to these events. It's not as simple as, fly in, fly out like the pros, the big, the Tomacs, the Roxons, all those sorts of people are doing. For these guys, it's a significant effort for them. And like you heard from Carter, he's working during the week and he's getting to the races still. So awesome interview. Thanks for Carter's time on the AlwaysMoto podcast. But that's it. Soon we'll be up and running with our alwaysmoto.com site. But for now, please check out all our written articles and continue to be, will be on this site as well, fullnoise.com.au. Make sure you send through your t-shirt order to info@alwaysmoto.com. Follow us on social media to stay up to date with all things injury and moto. Search Always Moto and then follow and subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed. I made this request on my social channel today, but if your podcast app allows, whilst you're listening right now, stop, listen, pick it back up, get the brain re-engaged. As soon as this podcast is over, leave us a rating on your podcast app. It'll be very much appreciated. Right, thank you. Good. Yeah, go do it. All right, but that's it. Thanks to Slantboard Guy. Thanks to Polar Australia. Thanks to the Fantasy League sponsors, Coastal Motorcycle Centre, Goat Brand MX, Thor MX Australia, Michelin Australia, Ringmaster Images, Helltech Australia, and Bolt Everywhere. Thanks to the AlwaysMoto Contractor. Thanks to you guys and girls for listening. And remember, you need to be smooth to be fast, because if you're not, I'll probably be seeing you deep in the emergency department, maybe even the clinic, having strapping tape put wherever it will stick.